Hello, thanks for joining me. I'm the Badger Reborn, and today I'm going to talk about the Wheel of Time and rewrites that could happen for the TV show, including episodes 4 and 5 of Season 1. If you haven't watched my first two videos, you'll need to watch those first to know what's going on. Click here to watch the first one or the second one if you haven't seen them. Please give this video a like and subscribe, and leave a comment below letting me know what you liked or disliked about the changes and what changes you might suggest as well. And don't forget to share this video with other people too. For a quick recap, at the end of episode 3, I had the group meet back up in Kyrian, along with meeting Loyal. Episode 4 is titled The Dragon Reborn, which is obviously a sign that some pretty huge events are going to be happening in this episode. So before I go on, I just wanted to take a moment to note how difficult it is to do these recaps without leaving out something, because Robert Jordan was such a master at integrating so many small details from just various different story elements into one big plot. And I keep leaving things out and being like, oh yeah, that was really important. Oh, that needs to tie in. And it's so difficult because he was just such a master, like I said, at weaving those things together into one plot. But I think I've done a pretty decent job at least hitting on some of the highlights. This video has spoilers for the Eye of the World and the Great Hunt, so if you haven't read those books, read them and then come back. So, in Kyrian, Loyal tells the group about meeting with an Aiel who had talked about the Eye of the World. This jogs Perrin and Egwene to remember a similar event that they heard from the Tinkers, with Aiel kind of talking about the Eye of the World and how it was going to be really important and how it might be attacked. Moraine realizes they need to go to the Eye of the World, which is near Shinar, so she asks Loyal to guide them through the ways. He reluctantly agrees, and they set off on their journey. We see Pad and Fane following them in. While they're traveling in the ways, the Black Wind almost eats them or consumes them, however you want to think about that. I think it's important to have the Black Wind because it'll be important again later in the story. I've seen a lot of speculation as to what it could look like, and to me it just looks like a big black mist that sort of oozes or sweats droplets of blood. So to add to the idea of them using the ways, this picture has been leaked of a structure that seems like it could be a waygate. It's obviously larger than a waygate that's described in the books, but I think that could just be a simple practical reason that a horse is really tall and a person sitting on a horse is even taller, and they really don't want to run the risk of an actor or a stuntman smacking their head on a waygate that's not much taller than the height of a horse plus a man. So just having this open top structure is a lot safer, and it kind of adds a maybe different cinematic element. The green screen behind it could be CGI'd to look like the vines and leaves that are on the waygate front. So they exit the ways in Shinar, and they immediately see the army, the Shinaran army, already marching north towards Tarwin's Gap. The army is on the move already because the Trollocs are on the move south towards the Gap as well. This cuts out the first scene of them meeting in Faldara. Included with the army is Alana Mosfani, who has already been cast to be played by Priyanka Bose, and her two warders have been cast as well. I'll go into a little bit more detail of why she makes sense with this army. It's mostly about casting and timeline schedules. She and Logain, Priyanka Bose and Logain, have not been on the set at the same time. So originally I thought that she might be one of the Aes Sedai who fights Logain later on, but it seems like Logain was leaving the set when she was getting there, or vice versa. So I don't think that makes as much sense. This is obviously a big change from the books, with the army already heading towards Tarwin's Gap. Here are some of the reasons that I think it could happen. First, I don't think we'll get as huge of a battle between the Shinarans and the Trollocs of Tarwin's Gap as we do in the books. This is the climactic battle of the book, and it's the end of a long book, and for what Robert Jordan knew at the time, it might have been the only book of the series. So he had to make it big. In the show, though, it's only episode 4 of season 1, so I don't think this will have the same kind of impact. There will still be a battle, just not quite as large. Second, I'll go ahead and say, I'll bring this up a little bit later in the video too, but I don't think that Rand will be the one to destroy this army like he does in the books. Instead, the Shinarans, with the help of the Aes Sedai who are with them, will win the battle by themselves. Having Rand destroy an entire army could seem a little unrealistic, and I think could make new viewers of the show skeptical of his abilities. So why not just have the Shinarans stay in Faldara, and then Moraine and the group meets them there like they do in the books? I think this is definitely a possibility, but I think it seems a little bit silly to enter Faldara, leave and go to the Eye, and then immediately come back in the same episode or maybe the next episode right afterwards. In the books it works fine because it's spread across the beginning and then the end of 2 different books, so there's a big gap there. But in the show it would be such a short timeline, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to enter the fortress, leave the fortress, enter the fortress again, and then leave the fortress again. I toyed with the idea of having the Shinaran army go to Gildan to take down Logain, or maybe go to Saldea to take down Mazrim Taim. But then I looked at the maps and realized this is completely unfeasible, so I scrapped those ideas. But at this point I think we could cut back to Logain. He's developed quite a large army and his channeling skills have progressed to a really high level, and we're getting close to that battle with the Aes Sedai, which could be another really big conflict of the season and potentially the episode. Like I said, the Logain and Alana actors don't seem to be in Prague at the same time, so I think Alana will be with the Shienarans, so it'll just be Red sisters in a group who capture Logain. Back in Shinar, Padan Fain gets captured trying to sneak into the Shiennaran camp. Moiraine interrogates Fain and learns that he's extremely dangerous, and gets a little bit of the backstory that involves Mordeth and Shadar Logoth. Agomar sends him back to the dungeons in Faldara under guard from Ingtar, which of course Ingtar is frustrated about having to miss the battle at Tarwin's Gap, just like he is in the book. So in the morning, Moiraine and the rest of the group leave the Shienarans and continue to head in the direction of the Eye of the World. They face some dangers along the way, but eventually arrive at the relative safety of the Eye. I think we could see the Green Man being cut. This has come up in a lot of discussion, especially since he would probably largely be very CGI, and this could be budget heavy or just not look very good. I wouldn't be really upset if this happened. I don't think he's super integral and doesn't really have a huge role. He could stay perhaps, but I think another factor that works against the Green Man being in the show is how similar he is to Ince in Lord of the Rings. Amazon, I think, will definitely take some steps to make the first season of Wheel of Time seem less similar to Lord of the Rings than it is in the books. Robert Jordan obviously drew a lot of inspiration from Lord of the Rings, but Amazon doesn't want this show to be too similar to the Lord of the Rings movies, especially since they have a Lord of the Rings show coming out as well. At this point in the episode, they find the Eye of the World, and then Agenor shows up. My current theory is that it's just Agenor at the Eye of the World, and not Balthamel, and also not Ashamael. The reason for this being that I think it's just a little bit too much to have 3 Forsaken show up in a mid-season episode, and to have all 3 Forsaken be defeated by a pretty untrained boy and the rest of the small group. In addition, the book climax is already pretty confusing, and trimming this down to 1 Forsaken could be an improvement there. The show would be smart to slow play Rand's power development, I think, because fantasy audiences are so attuned to a hero's journey and the slow burn, the slow development of that. Having Rand defeat Ashamael at the Eye of the World just doesn't really fit with what fantasy audiences are expecting, I think, because it makes Rand seem too powerful too fast when he's never even had any sort of formal training in how to channel. I think saving Balthamel for a later reveal as just showing up as Arengar makes some sense too, but I'll talk about the reasons for that in a later video. So at the Eye, Agenor fights Moiraine and Nynaeve, eventually dispensing of both of them, as well as Lan and the rest of the group. He chases Rand through the woods, and eventually corners him. Agenor explains what the Eye of the World is, and they both begin to draw on its power source. This scene has to be more clear than it is in the book, and it also cannot leave viewers skeptical of Rand's ability to be harmed. I know for some it makes sense, and Nablus, I think, has explained kind of what's going on in this scene, but it doesn't make sense for a lot of first-time book readers, and that's something the show really needs to be sensitive to, because it wouldn't make sense for a lot of first-time show viewers either, if that was the case. Rand and Agenor continue to draw power from the Eye, and we see white cords stretching back from them towards the Eye where they're drawing that power from. We also see an unidentified black cord coming from Agenor, which will be important setup for later. Agenor then burns himself out without Rand really doing anything. This may seem a bit anticlimactic, but I think it shows Rand's power level without making him seem too powerful. It just shows his level of strength. And it's also how it happens in the book. While this is happening, we also see the battle at Tarwin's Gap. While Rand doesn't appear there, I think flashes of light could be coming off of him and Agenor, and these will be so bright that they're seen even as far away as Tarwin's Gap. The soldiers see these flashes and are heartened by it, and win the battle, with the help of the Aes Sedai. As I said before, I think having Rand kill an entire Trolloc army at this point would undercut some of the later tension when he has to fight just 1 or 2 Trollocs. And so like I said, I would also cut Ashamael out of this ending, in addition to just making Rand seem too powerful. It makes Ashamael seem almost laughably weak that he would lose to Rand, with Rand being so untrained. Plus, in the show timeline, Ashamael would lose to Rand here, he would lose to Rand again near the end of the season, or maybe the beginning of Season 2, and then, spoiler alert for later books, tune out right now, he would lose to Rand again later at the end of probably the end of Season 2, maybe early Season 3, but I think it would be the end of Season 2. You can come back now. Plus, we just don't need 3 Forsaken killed at a mid-season episode. I just think that's way too much. Meanwhile, or perhaps earlier in the episode, Logain begins a battle with the Aes Sedai and Gildan. They attempt to take him down, him and his army fight back, and it's a really exciting battle. This might even be the biggest battle they show in the episode, with all the Aes Sedai channeling that's going on. It'd be really enjoyable to watch. Plus, Cadsuane could possibly make a brief cameo appearance here. Back in the Blight, the group of Rand, Mat, Perrin, Moiraine, Lan, Nynaeve, and Egwene discover the Dragon Banner, the Horn of Valir, and the seal of the Dark One's prison. Moiraine explains a little bit about what the seal is, and maybe about the Horn of Valyr as well, but as in the book, doesn't really talk about the Dragon Banner much. We don't have really much association of it to Rand, except that Rand kind of has that indication that it might be something for him, and Moiraine, of course, maybe gives him a knowing little look. After that, the group heads back towards the Fal Dara Keep. Once they get there, they meet up with the Amyrlin Seat and realize that she's just arrived. She came to support the other Aes Sedai and the Shienarans in the battle at Tarwin's Gap, but she arrived just too late. Varian Mathwin is also there, as she is in the books. Maria Doyle Kennedy has been cast by the show in an undisclosed role. It's been speculated that she might play Swan, mostly due to her blue eye color, but I think she's a little bit too old for that part, especially since Swan needs to look younger. I think Maria Doyle Kennedy is a much better fit for Varian Mathwin, who she looks a little bit similar to, and probably has a pretty similar personality to as well, so she might really fit that role quite nicely. Leandrin, who we know is being played by Kate Fleetwood, would be there as well. Alternatively, I think Leandrin might be the one leading the Red Sisters who take down Logain, since she doesn't really need to be in Fal Dara, and it could be a change that Rafe and the writing staff might make to put a more prominent character, Leandrin in this case, with that group of Aes Sedai who brings Logain back to the tower. So when they arrive back at Fal Dara, Rand meets with the Amyrlin immediately, along with Moiraine and Varen. The Aes Sedai confer, and Swan tells Rand that he is the Dragon Reborn. We cut to Gildan, where the Aes Sedai overwhelm Logain and bring him down. His followers scatter, and his army is done for. The Aes Sedai decide to put him in the cage and bring him through Caemlyn on their way to Tar Valon, just like they do in the books. This contrast between Rand being named as the Dragon Reborn, by Swan, Moiraine, and Varen at least, and then Logain immediately following and being captured, would be a nice cinematic element, and a great way to end the episode. Next up is episode 5, titled Blood Calls Blood. This is likely a reference to the dark prophecy that was written on the cell wall in Fal Dara, when Padan Fain escaped. Early in the episode, Rand and Egwene go and talk with Padan Fain. Rand is still shaken by his conversation with Swan, but he hasn't revealed that to anyone else yet. They see the deterioration that Padan Fain is experiencing as Mordeth kind of gains more control over him. Rand also continues to train with Lan during this time with the sword. As in the book, this time in Fal Dara could also be a nice time to establish Mat's growing luck. The show might try to explain it a little bit more than the books do, possibly for instance by having the Dice Terangriel that some people speculate was involved or kind of interfered with his healing in the White Tower. Maybe this would be present in his healing in Fal Dara when Moiraine and Swan and Varen heal him a little bit from the dagger's influence. I don't really think it needs this explanation, but it might be a nice Easter egg if they decide they want to go that route. Then, Trollocs attack the keep and free Padan Fain. Rand runs into the dungeon and sees the prophecy that was scrawled, as well as Padan Fain's note, enticing him to come and meet on Tommen Head. They also find out that the Horn of Valyr was stolen. Moiraine replaces Rand's wardrobe, which I think is an underrated funny scene, by the way. The group gets charged by Swan with finding the Horn of Valyr. Rand almost gets assassinated. They ride out and meet up with Hurin and continue on their way in search of the Horn. Shortly after, Egwene and Nynaeve would leave for the White Tower, along with Swan, Alana, and Lyanna, who's being played by Jennifer Garcia. I think in the show, Alana could be a prime candidate for being the character who's a merging of several Aes Sedai, including Morella. I think that merging some Aes Sedai makes a lot of sense in the show, just cutting down a little bit of the characters that viewers would have to keep track of, and it sort of makes sense to combine several smaller plots into one. So Alana could be one of the ones that helps train Nynaeve and Egwene on their journey towards the tower. Next, I think it would make sense in the show to have Moiraine and Lan go to the cottage and we'd see them meeting with Adeliz and Vandene. Except, I think it might not be Adeliz and Vandene. I think in the show this might be changed to a different Aes Sedai, Kareen Nagashi. Kareen is an Aes Sedai who is present in New Spring, and along with Swan and Moiraine, she was charged with finding the Dragon Reborn by the Amyrlin of the time. Moiraine might go to her for counsel, advice, and research as well. I think this would make a lot more sense to me than her trusting Adeliz and Vandene, who sort of pop up out of nowhere, since she has this backstory with Kareen Nagashi. Kareen is going to be played by Claire Perkins, and since my last video, it's now been revealed that Peter Franzen will play the warder of Claire Perkins, so I think she could be the warder who's at this cabin as well. We could get some fight scene here with Lan along with that warder, played by Peter Franzen, fighting a Drakkar if they're still in the show, or perhaps there's some Murjol. We might also get a flashback scene to New Spring at this point, maybe a couple of flashback scenes. Back with the group hunting for the Horn, Mat and Perrin find the Dragon Banner, and Rand reveals that he might be the Dragon Reborn. Mat especially feels like this is a really shocking betrayal, and feels like Rand is tainted now. I think the show will need to do a better job of this than the books do. A lot of readers don't feel like Mat's reaction is an appropriate one. I personally do. I think it's really fitting for the world, but the show needs to do a better job of proving that and explaining why it's appropriate for the world. Rafe and the writing team will need to do a really good job of explaining why it's maybe a little bit of an immature reaction from Matt, but also fitting given what we know about the Dragon Reborn and the stigma around male channelers and the dragon in the world. It's a pretty fitting response and one that a lot of people would have, even people that are friends with Rand. Next, Rand, Loyal, and Huron would enter the Portal Stone world, meet up with Selene, kind of travel around that world for a little while, and then come back out of the Portal Stone, this time near Camelin. If you're not a big fan of the Camelin-Kyrian swap that I've done, I think it's a pretty easy change. Just kind of imagine that I haven't done that swap and swap it back in your mind to Kyrian. But in kind of this version of the story, they come out near Camelin, and I think the episode could end with Rand and the group deciding to enter into Camelin and Selene mysteriously leaving them. These two episodes are clearly covering a lot of ground, finishing the Eye of the World, as well as a pretty big chunk of the beginning of the Great Hunt. I'm surprised to find out that the story, the way I laid it out, doesn't seem rushed. I figured it would seem very rushed at this pace, but I actually think it kind of fits nicely, and if the show goes at this speed, I could see it working out really well. I also wanted to briefly re-explain why I'm making some of these rewriting videos. We know the show will have some changes, some that are really great and we love, but some that make us scratch our heads and think, why did they make that change? Might the ones that I'm suggesting be the changes? Maybe some of them, definitely not all of them. However, one of my goals is to simply introduce new ideas of how the show could go and get discussion started about how these things might play out, how you might enjoy them, and what changes you might make yourself. Also just want to kind of remind book readers and lovers of the book like myself that these changes aren't a terrible thing. If they swap Kyrian or Camelin, it's not what it was in the books. Maybe it doesn't make sense from some angles, but it does make sense from other angles, and it's not the end of the world. It doesn't ruin the books. The books are still, the books are still the books that we love, and this doesn't have any effect on those. But it's a new way of introducing the world. I kind of like to think of it as if it's one of the alternate realities that Rand and the group sees when they misuse the Portal Stone, and he sees all the flicker scenes. One of my favorite scenes of the whole series, by the way. Just imagine that the show is one of those alternate dimensions, very similar to our real-world books, but plays out a little bit differently at certain points. And that's not a bad thing. So have fun with these changes. Discuss them in the comments below and let me know what you think. Additionally, join my Discord, which is linked in the show notes below. It's a great way to keep talking about these ideas, and I often ask kind of some thoughts on upcoming videos that I'm making, or just sort of share things that I'm thinking about. And you guys are welcome to do that as well. Also, share the video along with your thoughts on possible rewrites for the show. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to keep watching, please hit the like button and subscribe as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Additionally, just wanted to give a thanks to the YouTuber WhatUp. He gave me a shout out earlier this week and just kind of wanted to return the favor. I know his audience is larger than mine, but his videos are really great and he deserves that audience. If you haven't checked out his channel, definitely go do that. They're fantastic. Nablus also gave me a shout out in one of his live streams in his most recent video as well. Check his channel out. If you're a Wheel of Time fan, you've probably seen it, but if not, you're really missing out. He has some really quality content, a ton of really quality content. By the way, hopefully the sound quality is better on this video than the last one. If not, I'm sorry about that. I'll try and get a new microphone soon to sort that out, but I don't really have the ability right now.